For example, Mrs. Clinton argued right from the get-go that a historic moment in the 2016 presidential race. A year-long FBI investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server scandal is over, ending with a devastating account of how the former Secretary of State has systematically misled the American people for 16 months about almost every facet of this scandal. Good evening and welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. More than 16 months ago, Americans learned that Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was conducting the business of the U.S. government from a private email account managed on her own private email server kept at her home in New York, outside the purview of the federal government or its controls for classified communications, immediately sparking concerns that the nation's top diplomat may have compromised America's top secrets. Mrs. Clinton downplayed it all, and her top aides dismissed the people's criticism of her actions as, quote, absurd. The FBI launched an investigation, and hours ago, FBI Director James Comey announced his agency's findings. The FBI director finding the evidence does not support criminal charges against Mrs. Clinton, but absolutely supports a finding that she misled the American people over and over and over again while under federal investigation. For example, Mrs. Clinton argued right from the get-go that she never sent or received any classified information on her personal email. Watch.
I did not email any classified material to anyone on my email. There is no classified materials.
I never sent or received any classified material. They are retroactively classifying it.
From the group of 30,000 emails returned to the State Department in 2014, 110 emails in 52 email chains have been determined by the owning agency to contain classified information at the time they were sent or received.
They were classified at the time they were sent or received. This is not a matter of retroactive classification. That was another misleading statement from the Clinton camp. Next, Mrs. Clinton's repeated claim that she turned over all official emails to investigators and that the American people could trust her, that there were none lurking on her private server or inappropriately withheld from the State Department once she got caught with the private server, that she was hiding nothing. Well, listen to that.
I have absolute confidence that everything that could be in any way connected to work is now in the possession of the State Department.
The FBI also discovered several thousand work-related emails that were not among the group of 30,000 emails returned by Secretary Clinton to State in 2014.
In any way, it was turned over, except the FBI director says no. Some of these work-related emails she failed to turn over were actually also classified, according to Director Comey. Next, Mrs. Clinton said that she only used a personal email because she didn't want to carry more than one email device.
Thought it would be easier to carry just one device for my work and for my personal emails instead of two.
Secretary Clinton used several different servers and administrators of those servers during her 4 years at the State Department. And she also used numerous mobile devices to send and to read email on that personal domain.
Next, Mrs. Clinton claimed her unprecedented email setup was permitted by the rules.
It was allowed, and the rules have been clarified since I left about the practice.
None of these emails should have been on any kind of unclassified system. They were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information.
The FBI director went on to say that no reasonable person in Secretary Clinton's position could have believed that they were acting appropriately. Next, Mrs. Clinton has repeatedly assured the country that America's secrets were safe, despite their presence on her home server.
It had numerous safeguards. It was on property guarded by the Secret Service, and there were no security breaches.
We assess it is possible that hostile actors gained access to Secretary Clinton's personal email account.
Director Comey found the world's most notorious hackers knew about Mrs. Clinton's email and said it is conceivable they have everything, although the FBI is not able to prove that, he said. However, after all that, Director Comey said he had to conclude that the former Secretary of State likely committed no crime here.
In looking back at our investigations into the mishandling or removal of classified information, we cannot find a case that would support bringing criminal charges on these facts.
The director explaining that in similar cases, there has been evidence that the target intended to disclose classified material, that there was obvious disloyalty to the United States or obstruction of justice, none of which he found present in this case. Fox News senior political analyst Britt Hume. Britt, great to see you. Your thoughts?
Thanks, Megan. Well, you did a very good job there of setting forth just how Comey's statement just blew up this tissue of lies that has been told by Secretary Clinton throughout this case, ending, of course, with his conclusion that while, as he put it at one point, there is evidence of potential violations of the statutes regarding the handling of classified information. Then he goes on to say, our judgment is that no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case. So he didn't really find necessarily that she hadn't committed a crime. He just said that he didn't think it was a crime that should be prosecuted, which is a different matter entirely, and goes well beyond what one might have expected an FBI director to recommend to the department, perhaps, or to say publicly, which makes this whole procedure today more than a little unusual, Megan, because if you think about it, if he didn't think it was worth prosecuting, all he had to do, when you think about it, is simply turn over his findings to the Department of Justice and leave it to the Department of Justice to make what he described as a prosecutive decision. He declined to do that. In fact, I think what he probably thought, Megan, was that if he did that, there wasn't any chance that the department would bring charges. And if you start thinking about the Obama Justice Department, with Loretta Lynch at its head, formerly headed by Eric Holder, the most credible person in the whole place that anybody's ever heard of is James Comey of the FBI. And it's not too much to suggest here, it seems to me, Megan, that he has placed his credibility at the service of what he knew would be the ultimate outcome of this case once it was referred to the Justice Department. And in that sense, he did this administration, this Attorney General, and perhaps it's not unfair to say Hillary Clinton a very great service, although, as I say, he did blow up her whole network of lies that she told over time.
Well, I mean, he seemed to be saying, we're going to get into the law after you in our next segment, but he seemed to be saying to me, this is how I interpreted it, that no reasonable prosecutor would bring a case like this because the history doesn't support cases like this. When these cases are brought, it's for intentional actions that undermine the security of the United States. And if you look at the ones that have been brought, it's where somebody intentionally stole documents from their government agency, downloaded them on their personal device, kept them at home, lied to the FBI when they got caught, tried to throw the device into a river, that kind of thing. And he is right that there isn't a case that looks much like this one. However, the recitation of the lies, Britt, I mean, he didn't have to do that.
No, he didn't. And I think in that sense, he did. Basically what he said is she did everything short of a crime and then lied about it all the way.
While she was being investigated. I don't know if she lied to him, but she repeatedly told the American people a bunch of nonsense.
Well, that's true. I mean, and this sets that forth completely. One thing that he didn't quite get to is you notice along the way, Megan, Secretary Clinton changed her claim from there was no classified information to there was no information marked classified, and that was a complete deception from the jump, because information is not classified because it's marked. It's marked because it's classified.
And he took that on directly.
Well, he basically blew that up, too, if you think about it.
But, Britt, what do you think? And you've been saying that all along, and he agrees with you, and not with Mrs. Clinton, who also knows better. But my question for you, Britt, is whether this makes any difference. Her dishonesty numbers are already through the roof. The Democrats, so far have not shown a huge inclination toward Trump. So how does this play in the political race? Well,
look, there's still a significant body of undecided voters out there, enough to make the election go one way or the other. And this takes out of Hillary Clinton's arsenal any effective weapon claiming that Donald Trump is irresponsible and possibly reckless. She has now been found by the Federal Bureau of Investigation to have engaged in extreme carelessness in the handling of the nation's most sensitive information. That is really damning. It would, under ordinary circumstances, it would rule out a candidate for president. But this is a peculiar year under peculiar circumstances. She's up against a candidate who's got about 40% support, and he seems to have trouble breaking out of that. and is distrusted by many voters. But make no mistake about it, she carries this burden into the fall, and it will be with her all the way, and it is all kinds of fuel for the Trump campaign if it uses it effectively.
All they need is Director Comey. I mean, that's all they need is him. He should be in every ad Trump runs, because Trump doesn't have to say a word. He just has to point to the director of the FBI. Britt, it's good to see you.
Thank you, Megan.